Amara Davis collapsed against the hospital wall, her phone slipping from trembling fingers as the doctor's words echoed in her mind. Her father had less than 3 months without the experimental treatment that cost more than she made in 2 years. The one person who had always been her rock was dying, and the $250,000 standing between him and survival might as well have been $250 million. A nurse rushed over as Amara's knees buckled, catching her before she hit the floor. "Miss, are you all right?" "I need to make this money," Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I have to save him." The stakes couldn't be higher, her father's life hanging by a thread while her entire family depended on her success in the corporate world they believed she had conquered. What they didn't know was that despite her executive assistant position at Montgomery Enterprises, one of the country's largest conglomerates, she was drowning in student debt and barely making ends meet. The mystery of how she would save her father consumed her as she straightened her spine, wiped her tears, and stepped out into the December cold. Her grandmother's dying wish to see her settled with someone successful before passing only added another impossible expectation to her shoulders. The next morning, Amara applied her makeup with practiced precision, concealing all evidence of her sleepless night. Her dark brown skin glowed despite everything, and she twisted her long silky hair into a professional updo. The reflection staring back at her showed nothing of the turmoil within, just the perfect, composed assistant to the most powerful man in Manhattan. As the elevator ascended to the executive floor, she reminded herself that Julian Montgomery, billionaire extraordinaire, could never know about her personal crisis. He valued efficiency and detachment. Emotional baggage had no place in his world. Julian was already in his office when she arrived, his tall figure silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he seemed to own. At 35, he commanded respect with his mere presence, fair skin contrasting with dark, precisely cut hair, his aesthetic build evident even beneath his impeccably tailored suit. When he turned, his piercing blue eyes assessed her with their usual intensity. "You're 3 minutes late," he said, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "The world must be ending." "Traffic apocalypse," Amara replied with practiced ease, ignoring the irony of his unintentional accuracy about her world. "Your coffee is at the perfect temperature, and the Nakamura contract is ready for your signature. What would I do without you?" It wasn't really a question, and they both knew it. Julian Montgomery didn't need anyone, it was part of his mystique, the billionaire who had built an empire through brilliant strategy and absolute emotional detachment. The day proceeded with its usual frenetic pace until Amara's phone buzzed with a text from her cousin. "Grandma's asking about your boyfriend again. She's getting worse. Please tell me you're bringing someone impressive to Christmas dinner." Amara groaned, forgetting where she was for a moment. Her grandmother, diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months ago, had become fixated on seeing Amara settled before she passed. The fictional boyfriend Amara had invented to give her grandmother peace had now become a required guest at the family Christmas gathering in just 2 weeks. "Problem?" Julian's voice startled her. He was standing in the doorway of his office, watching her with an unreadable expression. "No, sir. Just family stuff." She straightened in her chair. "Family stuff that makes you look like you're facing a firing squad?" His eyebrow arched perfectly, infuriatingly. Before she could respond, her phone rang, the hospital. She answered with shaking hands, turning away from Julian's observant gaze. "Ms. Davis, we need to discuss your father's payment plan before scheduling his next evaluation." The financial administrator's voice droned on about installments and deadlines. "I understand," Amara whispered, feeling Julian's presence behind her. "I'll figure something out." She ended the call, composing herself before turning to face her boss. "My office. Now." His tone left no room for discussion. Inside his minimalist sanctuary, Julian leaned against his desk rather than sitting behind it. "I don't pry into my employees' personal lives, Amara, but when it affects their work, I take notice." "It won't happen again, sir." Her voice was steady despite the panic flooding her system. That wasn't my point. For a moment, something almost like concern flickered across his features. You've been distracted for weeks. Your work remains excellent, but you're clearly dealing with something significant. Amara stood frozen, caught between her pride and desperation. A tear escaped before she could stop it. Julian's eyes widened slightly, the most surprise he'd shown in the 3 years she'd worked for him. "Sit down," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Against her better judgment, she found herself telling him about her grandmother's terminal illness and the fictional boyfriend she was now expected to produce for Christmas. It was safer than revealing the truth about her father's condition and their financial crisis. "So you need a boyfriend for Christmas," Julian summarized when she finished. "Someone successful enough to impress your grandmother before she passes." Amara laughed hollowly. "Essentially. I'll figure something out. Pretend it's me." The words hung between them, so unexpected that Amara was certain she'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Pretend it's me," Julian repeated, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "Your boyfriend. For Christmas. You can't be serious." Amara stared at him in disbelief. "When am I not serious?" He straightened, reverting to his usual confidence. "You need someone successful to impress your family. I'm objectively successful. It's a logical solution." "Mr. Montgomery." "Julian," he corrected. "If we're dating, you should probably use my first name." "We're not dating," she countered. "Details." He waved dismissively. "Look, consider it a Christmas bonus. 2 days of my time to give your grandmother peace and solve your immediate problem." What Amara couldn't understand was why Julian Montgomery, who guarded his privacy with near paranoia, would offer to spend Christmas with her family. What she didn't know was that for the first time in years, Julian had found someone whose pain mattered more to him than his own carefully constructed walls. 3 days later, Amara found herself in Julian's private penthouse, perched uncomfortably on a leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. "We need a backstory," he said, handing her a glass of wine. "How we met is obvious, but when did our professional relationship evolve?" 6 months ago, Amara suggested, thinking of her grandmother's diagnosis. "Long enough to be serious but new enough to explain why I haven't brought you around before." Julian nodded. "What attracted you to me?" His mouth quirked in that half-smile that simultaneously infuriated and intrigued her. "Your modesty, clearly," she replied dryly, earning a genuine laugh from him that transformed his face and sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. "And I fell for your sharp tongue and refusal to be intimidated by me," he countered, his eyes holding hers a beat too long. They spent hours crafting their fictional relationship, and Amara discovered sides of Julian she'd never seen, a dry, self-deprecating humor, a surprising knowledge of literature, and an intensity that had nothing to do with business when he truly focused on someone. As midnight approached, she realized with a shock that she'd completely forgotten her worries for the first time in months. "Why are you really doing this?" she finally asked as he walked her to the elevator. Julian's expression closed off immediately. "I told you, it's practical. No offense, but nothing about this is practical for you." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "My mother died on Christmas Eve when I was 10. My father was too busy building his empire to come to the hospital." His voice was devoid of emotion, but his eyes held decades of pain. No one should spend Christmas watching someone they love suffer alone. Before Amara could respond, he leaned down and brushed his lips against her cheek. "Practice," he murmured, but his eyes said something entirely different. "Good night, Amara." The elevator doors closed on his enigmatic expression, leaving Amara breathless and confused. The man she thought she knew, brilliant, detached, untouchable Julian Montgomery, had just revealed a crack in his perfect facade that changed everything she thought she understood about him. What she didn't know was that as Julian watched the elevator descend, he was making a call that would change both their lives forever. I need information on Amara Davis's father, he instructed his private investigator. Medical records, financial situation, everything. And I need it by morning. The charity gala was in full swing, Manhattan's elite mingling beneath crystal chandeliers while sipping champagne that cost more than Amara's monthly rent. As Julian's date, she wore a gown he'd sent to her apartment, a deep burgundy creation that complemented her dark brown skin perfectly and hugged her figure in ways that drew appreciative glances from across the room. "Everyone's staring at us," she whispered as Julian's hand rested possessively on the small of her back. "They're staring at you," he corrected, his breath warm against her ear. "And I can't blame them. This is just practice, right?" Amara reminded him, trying to ignore the electricity between them that felt increasingly less pretend. "Of course." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Speaking of which, your boyfriend would probably get you a drink. Champagne?" As Julian moved toward the bar, a familiar voice made Amara's blood run cold. "Well, if it isn't Montgomery's pretty little assistant, playing dress-up." Amara turned to face Victoria Blackwood, Julian's ex-fiancée and the CFO of his largest competitor. The woman's perfect blonde bob and predatory smile had haunted the business pages 3 years ago when she'd left Julian for his rival, taking proprietary information with her. "Victoria. I didn't realize they were letting just anyone in these days," Amara replied sweetly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Playing girlfriend now? That's ambitious, even for you. But you should know, Julian doesn't do love. Not since me." She leaned closer. "He told me once that emotions are a weakness he can't afford. You're just a convenient distraction." Before Amara could respond, Julian appeared at her side, his face a mask of cold fury as he handed her a champagne flute. "Victoria. Poaching staff not keeping you busy these days?" His voice could have frozen fire. "Just giving your girlfriend some friendly advice." Victoria's smile was venomous. History has a way of repeating itself, after all. As Victoria sauntered away, Julian's expression was unreadable, but the tension radiating from him was palpable. What did she mean about history repeating itself? Amara asked quietly. "Nothing worth discussing." His jaw was rigid. "Excuse me a moment." Amara watched him disappear into the crowd, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. A hand touched her elbow, and she turned to find James Chen, Julian's head of security, beside her. "He won't talk about it," James said quietly, "but you should know. Victoria didn't just leave him for a competitor. She sold information that nearly destroyed the company, and she used personal details from their relationship to do it." He glanced in the direction Julian had gone. "I've worked for him for 10 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Before Amara could process this revelation, a commotion erupted across the ballroom. She pushed through the crowd to find Julian and Victoria's new husband, Richard Hargrove, being separated by security guards. Julian's knuckles were bloodied, and Hargrove's lip was split. "He's finished," Hargrove spat. "By Christmas, Montgomery Enterprises will be mine, and everyone will know what really happened 3 years ago." As security escorted Hargrove out, Julian's eyes found Amara's across the room. The raw vulnerability she saw there for just a moment shook her to her core. This wasn't practice anymore, and they both knew it. In the car afterward, Julian was silent, staring out the window as Manhattan glittered past. "I should explain," he finally said. "You don't owe me an explanation." Amara touched his injured hand gently. "Yes, I do." He turned to face her. "Because if we're doing this, even pretending, you deserve to know why I don't do relationships. The real reason." "Tell me," she whispered. Julian's confession poured out in the darkness of the car, how Victoria had used his mother's death and his father's abandonment to gain his trust, how she'd accessed files only someone intimate would know about, how the betrayal had nearly cost him everything he'd built. "The board gave me an ultimatum after that," he finished quietly. No personal entanglements that could compromise the company. Not that it mattered, I'd already decided never to let anyone that close again. His laugh was hollow. Until somehow, without trying, you got closer than anyone. The limousine stopped outside Amara's apartment building, but neither moved to leave. Julian. Amara began, not knowing what she wanted to say. He silenced her with a kiss, not the practiced peck they'd planned for their charade, but something desperate and real that left her breathless. When he pulled away, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "That wasn't practice," he said roughly. "And it's why this is a terrible idea." Before she could respond, he was out of the car, walking around to open her door. "Good night, Amara." She stood on the sidewalk, watching his limousine disappear into the night, touching her lips where she could still feel his kiss. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from across the street, taking photographs before slipping away into the shadows. The next morning, Amara's phone chimed with a text from Julian, "My house, 2 p.m. We need to talk." Amara arrived at Julian's penthouse precisely at 2, her stomach in knots. She'd spent the night replaying their kiss, trying to convince herself it was part of their arrangement, nothing more. The security guard nodded in recognition as she entered the private elevator, and for one wild moment, she imagined a world where this was real, where she belonged in Julian Montgomery's life as more than an employee. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, but instead of Julian, she found a middle-aged man in an expensive suit waiting for her. "Ms. Davis? I'm Howard Brennan, Mr. Montgomery's attorney." The man's expression was grim. "Please, sit down." "Where's Julian?" Alarm bells rang in Amara's head. "Mr. Montgomery has been called to an emergency board meeting. He asked me to speak with you in his absence." Brennan placed a folder on the coffee table between them. "These are non-disclosure agreements regarding your personal relationship with Mr. Montgomery." "Our what?" Amara stared at him in confusion. Brennan cleared his throat uncomfortably. "After the incident at last night's gala, photographs of your intimate moment with Mr. Montgomery have surfaced. The board is concerned about another Victoria Blackwood situation." Amara's blood ran cold. "That's ridiculous. I would never." "Nevertheless," Brennan interrupted, "the board has requested these agreements be signed immediately, along with this." He slid another document forward. "A relationship termination agreement." "A what?" Amara could barely process what was happening. "It states that you agree to end all personal involvement with Mr. Montgomery while continuing your professional duties. The company is prepared to offer substantial compensation for your cooperation." Amara stood abruptly. "Where is Julian now?" "As I said, in a board meeting. He's fighting for his position, Ms. Davis. Hargrove Industries has made a hostile takeover bid, citing Mr. Montgomery's repeated personal indiscretions affecting business judgment as grounds for shareholder concern." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Victoria and her husband had orchestrated this, using Amara as the weapon. "I need to speak with Julian directly. I'm afraid that won't be possible until..." Amara was already heading for the elevator. "Tell Mr. Montgomery I'm not signing anything until I hear from him personally." Back on the street, Amara tried calling Julian repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. Her next stop was Montgomery Enterprises, where security informed her that all executive floor access had been temporarily restricted. Desperate, she called James Chen. "I can't talk long," he answered quietly. "It's bad, Amara. Hargrove had those photos sent to every board member, along with financial records showing your father's medical bills." Amara froze. "What?" "They're claiming you approached Julian for financial help using your relationship as leverage, another Victoria scenario. Julian's denying everything, saying he didn't know about your father's condition." The ground seemed to shift beneath Amara's feet. "James, he didn't know. I never told him." There was a long pause. "Then you need to get to Riverside Hospital immediately. That's where Julian went after he stormed out of the meeting 20 minutes ago. The cab ride to the hospital was the longest of Amara's life. Her mind raced with questions. How did Hargrove know about her father? What was Julian doing at the hospital? And most pressingly, why hadn't Julian simply denied their relationship altogether? She found him standing outside her father's room, staring through the window at the man who had raised her, the man whose illness she'd kept secret from everyone, including him. "Julian," she said softly. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "You should have told me. It wasn't your problem to solve." Her voice trembled slightly. "Wasn't it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Do you know what I've been doing for the past week, Amara? Setting up a foundation for experimental medical treatments, with your father as the first recipient." He laughed bitterly. "The board thinks I diverted company resources for your benefit, and I couldn't even defend myself because I had done exactly that, just not for the reasons they think." Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm in love with you." The words hung between them, stark and unexpected. "I've been in love with you for over a year, watching you work yourself to exhaustion without complaint, never asking for help even when you were drowning." His voice broke slightly. "And now I've managed to ruin your reputation along with mine. You love me?" It was the only part Amara could focus on amid the chaos. "Completely. Inconveniently. Against every rule I set for myself." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "But none of that matters now. Hargrove's takeover bid will likely succeed. The company I've spent my life building will be dismantled. But I've ensured one thing, your father's treatment is paid for, regardless of what happens next. Julian, I don't." He cut her off gently. "You don't owe me anything. Especially not feelings you don't have." "But I do have them," Amara whispered, finally acknowledging the truth she'd been fighting. "I've been falling in love with you for 3 years, telling myself it was impossible, that you'd never see me that way." For a moment, hope flared in Julian's eyes, only to be replaced by resignation. "It doesn't matter now. By tomorrow, I'll likely no longer be your boss, or anything else." He pressed something into her hand, a business card. "This is Dr. Patel, the specialist overseeing your father's treatment. Everything is arranged." Before she could respond, Julian brushed past her toward the elevator, leaving Amara standing in the hospital corridor clutching the card and feeling as though her world had both shattered and reformed in a single moment. What she didn't know was that Julian was heading to make one last desperate attempt to save his company, and with it, any chance of a future with her. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear, with Manhattan transformed into a glittering wonderland of lights and festive decorations. Amara hadn't heard from Julian in 10 days, not since their hospital confrontation. The business news had been filled with reports of the power struggle at Montgomery Enterprises, but concrete information was scarce. Her father, miraculously, had been admitted to the experimental treatment program, with Dr. Patel assuring her that all financial arrangements had been made anonymously. The treatment was already showing promising results. Now, as Amara drove her rental car toward her family's home in Connecticut, her grandmother's Christmas gathering loomed before her. She'd considered canceling but couldn't bring herself to disappoint the dying woman. She would simply tell them her boyfriend had been unexpectedly called away, another disappointment in a season full of them. Her phone rang through the car's Bluetooth, displaying an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Davis? This is Howard Brennan." Amara nearly swerved off the road. "Mr. Brennan. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling on behalf of the Montgomery Enterprises board. We'd like to offer you a formal apology for the assumptions made regarding your relationship with Mr. Montgomery. It appears we were significantly misinformed." "I see." Amara's heart raced. "And Julian, Mr. Montgomery?" There was a pause. "That's something best discussed in person. However, I can tell you that Hargrove's takeover bid has failed. Spectacularly, in fact. After ending the call, Amara tried Julian's number again, but still received no answer. As she pulled into her parents' driveway, her mind was so preoccupied that she barely registered the unfamiliar luxury car parked outside until her youngest sister came running out. Amara. Your boyfriend's here. Why didn't you tell us he was so gorgeous? Talia grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the house. My what? Amara felt the world tilting sideways. Julian. He got here an hour ago. Grandma hasn't stopped smiling since. Stepping into her childhood home, Amara found the scene so surreal she wondered if she was dreaming. Julian Montgomery, Billionaire CEO, was sitting in her parents' modest living room, helping her grandmother string popcorn garlands while chatting about 1960s jazz as if they were old friends. He looked up when she entered, and for the first time since she'd known him, Julian appeared genuinely uncertain. Amara, he said softly, standing. I hope you don't mind. Your mother said I should surprise you. Her grandmother beamed. Isn't he wonderful? And so handsome. He's been telling me about how you organized his entire company when the computer systems crashed last year. Has he? Amara managed, her eyes never leaving Julian's. Could we have a moment? Julian asked, gesturing toward the front porch. Outside in the crisp December air, Amara finally found her voice. What are you doing here? What I should have done 10 days ago. Julian stepped closer. Fight for what matters most. The company? Amara asked, her voice small. You. His hand gently cupped her cheek. Always you. The company was just the means to be worthy of you. What happened with Hargrove? Julian's smile was grim with satisfaction. Let's just say Victoria's habit of stealing confidential information extended to her new husband's company as well. When evidence of their corporate espionage was anonymously delivered to the SEC, their takeover bid collapsed overnight. You had evidence all this time? Amara was stunned. I had suspicions, not proof. Finding that proof meant working with people I'd rather not associate with, calling in favors I'd hoped never to use. His expression softened. But for you, for us, it was worth it. There's an U.S. Amara whispered. Only if you want there to be. For the first time in their acquaintance, Julian Montgomery looked vulnerable. I'm not pretending anymore, Amara. I love you, not as my assistant, not for Christmas, but for every day I'm lucky enough to have with you. Snow began to fall gently around them as Amara reached up to touch his face. I love you too. No pretending. Their kiss was interrupted by cheers from the window, where Amara's entire family had gathered to watch, her grandmother front and center with a triumphant smile. Later that night, as the family celebrated around them, Julian whispered in Amara's ear, your father's doctor called. The treatment is working better than expected. They're giving him at least 5 more years. Tears filled Amara's eyes as she squeezed his hand. Thank you. I didn't do it to make you love me, he said seriously. I know. She smiled through her tears. That's why I do. As midnight approached, they stood together watching the snow fall, no longer employer and employee, no longer pretending, but two people who had found something real in what had started as fiction. Merry Christmas, Amara, Julian murmured, his arms around her waist. Merry Christmas, Julian. She leaned back against him, finally at peace. The first of many. What began as pretense had become their truth, proving that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to exactly where we're meant to be. For Amara and Julian, it took a Christmas charade to reveal what had been in front of them all along, that love finds us when we're busy making other plans, and that sometimes, the greatest gift is the courage to be vulnerable enough to accept it. If their story touched your heart, remember that everyone deserves their own Christmas miracle. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, just as this tale found its way to you. Share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances and new beginnings this holiday season.